Hey everybody, my name's Pastor Kevin. I'm on staff here with Canyon Creek Church, and we have a special guest with us this evening, Dowdy Misama.
Hey.
I've been practicing the name over and over again in my head all day. Pastor Brandon met Dowdy when he went to Tanzania on a vision trip with Convoy of Hope, and he was so impressed with the work that Convoy was doing over there and the work that Dowdy and his family were doing over there that he said, we've got to bring him halfway across the globe to come and share a little bit of what Pastor Brandon experienced. So it's my real pleasure. I'm super excited to get to kind of interview Dowdy this evening and for him to be able to share some stories with you. So is there anything any opening remarks that you'd like to make?
I'm so happy to be here. I'm so excited to be here. And I'm really, really passionate about the stuff that we're talking about. I can talk for hours and hours and hours. And so you should all be very thankful to Kevin for keeping me in line. Yeah.
We will do our best. We will do our best. Hey, so what made you want to devote your life to fighting injustice and fighting poverty?
Okay, so I have every advantage. Like, I've been exposed to lots of different things, living in America, being in Tanzania as a child. My parents were social workers. I have so many advantages. And so by being exposed to different things, it planted seeds in my heart from the time when I was young. I knew when I was a little child that my parents loved me and that God loved me. And we can't say the same for every child in this world or in this country or even in my family, in my extended family. So those were things that I learned early that they're continuing to grow as I'm continuing to grow.
Yeah, so, I think back in my own life, and I can think back to certain moments that happen, and they kind of crystallize what I think my life is supposed to be geared towards. Share one of those moments for you.
All right. I've got one in mind. My wife and I moved to the U.S. in 2009 when we got married. And then in 2010, I got a job in Springfield, Missouri, which by coincidence happens to be the same town where Convoy of Hope is headquartered. My job was at a newspaper there. So we were like living life and being American and doing American things and enjoying it, and still keeping in touch with our friends and relatives back in Tanzania. And I got a call one evening, which was morning for them. They were telling me, my friend Namo was telling me about one of her young sisters who we had gotten close to, named Christine. And Christine was 16 years old, and she got pregnant. But the context of this news was that before that, one of my other relatives, a certain cousin of mine, had gotten pregnant with her second kid. She was 17, and she was going to have to drop out of school for that. And then Christine had two younger sisters, like we use the same word for sister and cousin, basically. So two younger cousins. One was in like a freshman, equivalent of a freshman in high school, and the other one was in 7th grade. And they also got pregnant. And all of this news was coming at the same time. So pregnancy in Tanzania, Africa in general, means the end of education. So it really broke our hearts, and we cried. It was really, really heartbreaking news. And then we said, what can we do? Like, okay, we got this news, now what? And after a lot of conversation with my wife, who, by the way, is an amazing, incredible person. If she were here, then she'd be the one sitting here on this seat if Brandon had met her instead of me. But so she went back to Tanzania and did some research. She went and interviewed 16 girls who had gotten pregnant, and that meant the end of their education. And we wanted to kind of get to the why. So she went there, she interviewed several of them, and among them was Christine. the first girl who I mentioned. Christine had gotten married to an older man who was in his 40s. He was his second wife. For Maasai people, they have polygamy, so you can have multiple wives at the same time. She became his second wife, and she had cast aside her education. Partly, she cast aside the life of being educated, and she chose the life of a person in the village who wasn't educated. People told her, there's somebody coming to look for you, so she went out and met her. And she wasn't happy to see my wife. Christine wasn't happy. She was angry. So she was like, I know why you're here, and I know what brought you here, and I've got nothing to tell you, because where were you before? And that last question, where were you before, was really, really condemning. There are these taboos against talking about things between generations, especially deep things about sex. There are all of these myths that girls have. There are values that girls know about their place in society, about not being able to say no, about who their bodies belong to. And so there are all of these things that she could have known before but didn't. And that was the origin of that question, where were you before?
So it was this kind of, I feel the condemning kind of part of that of, you're showing up late. Where were you before? And I think in our conversations earlier, that was a powerful moment for you guys and for your family that said, we need to do something proactively in some of these regards rather than simply responding retroactively. And so when I was talking with Dowdy this morning and this afternoon, I thought that was a wonderful question, I think, for my life and for our lives as well. I think Jesus at times might ask us, where were you before? Are we a people that go and find these injustices, that go and find these areas where if we were to step in, that we could affect some change? Or are we people that sit back and kind of just wait until it's too egregious and we can't do anything about it but respond? And so I was just thinking about that and praying about that in my own life. I went, I want to be a person that is proactive in this, that I don't want that question to come back to me of, where were you before? And I think we all live our lives like that at times. Like, I think about my own family as a father. I don't want my little daughter, Bryn, to say to me at some point, where were you before? Before things got out of hand. I want to be a father that reaches out proactively and shepherds and fathers her and pastors her. And I think that extends to us as a church as well, is that we want to be a people that are proactive in that. So that was a great question, I think, that crystallized much of your ministry, and I think is a good question for the church as a whole to think through as well. So once you planted yourself there, once you guys decided we need to be here, we need to start doing something about this, once you started to say we need to meet some needs, what did that start to look like for you?
If I'm honest, we fought against it for a while, but God kept on putting us back in His direction, in His perfect direction. In the end, we reacted to that question by having a seminar at a school where my wife used to teach. And in the seminar, we invited a doctor and a human rights person. We invited somebody from the women's department of our church's local diocese. And we had a seminar for the girls. And they learned about rights. They learned about their bodies as girls. They learned about lots of different topics, about how God sees them versus how they see themselves. And they were so excited about it, and they were happy, and they wanted another one, so we organized another seminar for them later, and it became a series of seminars, and then we added some fun activities to draw more girls to it, and also these fun activities are building confidence in the girls so that they're not afraid to like come and get on stage and grab the microphone and start singing or addressing big groups of people. So we wanted them to have confidence and good self-esteem. So that developed into a series of things, and then it developed into a club, and then they performed and other schools started wanting it, so it grew. And up to now we're in 10 schools. Yes. They meet weekly, they learn about sexual and reproductive health, they learn about life skills, and they have a lot of fun activities. We've recorded 2 music albums, they've shot music videos. The music is a way to take the message. I'm talking to are there musicians here? Yeah. All right. Music is a way to take a message from where you are and bring it to other people, and you can teach through music. People don't even know they're learning. But you memorize songs, and suddenly those things are starting to leave an imprint behind. So we've seen a lot of really amazing things come out of that. Yeah.
It was astounding to me. So all of this is pre-Convoy of Hope kind of work for you. This is just stuff that you and your wife are starting to see needs, and you're asking the Lord, how do we begin meeting them, and what do we do? And so this was all just the personal calling of the Lord on your life, and this is developed now into Dowdy's work with Convoy of Hope, and there's a large program with them called Women's Empowerment, and we have a short video. It's about 4 minutes to introduce you to that. So let's go and watch it.
I used to have a boyfriend here, and I got pregnant. He doesn't want me to keep the baby. He wants me to abort the baby. I didn't agree with his idea. I want to keep the baby, and he doesn't want the baby. My trouble starts from there. After I refused to abort the baby, he started bringing other women to our house, and he would sleep with them in front of me. He took away my money, and he wanted to kick me out of the house. I gave birth. After that, I was forced out of my home, and I had to live on the street with my child. Usually during that night time, I stay with a stick, since some drunkard and some people come and pee on us. Even some, they try to rape me. My child didn't get proper food for 1 year, and it hampered his growth. Even for clothing, some neighbors, they give some diaper and clothing for my baby. When I see him now, I feel pity for him. At this age of him, he doesn't even take milk because of the effect of his childhood. Because I was desperate, it drove me to lie to try to get food for me and for my child. Life was so hard that I wanted to commit suicide, but I didn't because of my child. As a mother, I used to feel guilty because I couldn't offer him food, but because he was there, he was my source of strength. I tried my best to get a house. Finally, things began to turn around. Some people introduced me to Convoy of Hope. After passing through the selection criteria, I was provided with practical training how to prepare food, how to start business, how to calculate profit and loss. After that, I was provided with some money to start my business. I start my own business selling tea and coffee and food. Because of my business, I was able to start saving money for the new house, and it has 2 bedrooms. Now I'm very happy with my life. I can support myself and my child. I have no word to express my gratitude. Convoy of Hope have saved my child life and mine. I'm very grateful.
So one of the things that we get to do is when we support Reach and we support Convoy of Hope, this is what you're supporting. This type of ministry, and Dowdy is the one, boots on the ground, that is administering this. So this story is not unique. I think you have lots of stories that are pretty similar to this. I mean, this isn't just for a show or a value, but this is really what it's like.
Yeah, we've got, our founder's name is Hal, and he's a inspirational leader, amazing guy, and one of the things that God put on his heart is to see that children are fed. So we want to see children who are healthy and well-nourished. And there's so many different ways to do that. You can give children a meal, or you can support if their parents are farmers, you can support them to do agriculture so that they're better able to feed themselves through agriculture. But there's a number that's tossed around that usually fathers who, like if you invest in a father might take 1/4 of his income and reinvest it in his family. But a woman, a mother, will take 90% of her income and invest it in her family. And so one of the great things that we do as Convoy of Hope is our women's empowerment initiatives. Those ones, like Sitota from Ethiopia, we give women training, startup capital, and close monitoring weekly for 6 months. And we see them grow, and then they're able to take their businesses, use their profit, and feed their own families. And that's a generational thing. Their children are able to take care of themselves too, and we see generational change through that. So up to date, we've had about 2,800 women go through that program. It's completely worth applauding for. It's a very amazing program, and in my professional life, it's been the honor of my life to be part of that. One person that I want to talk about, her name is Matilda. She's from Tanzania. And again, this is where you see if I'm going for an hour talking about her, you cut me off. She lives about 20 minutes from my home, about 10 minutes from our office, in a community called Ngaramtoni. Everyone's saying Ngaramtoni. Wow, you guys are good. I thought that one would be harder for you. So Matilda, she was a destitute woman from Kilimanjaro region, which is about 2 hours to the east of where we live. She got pregnant, like Sitota in that last video. Her boyfriend told her to abort, and she said no. So he split. The boy never got to know his father. Up till now, she doesn't know if he's alive or dead. So she gave birth to a boy, and he's quiet and calm, but he's really delightful. Right now, he's 8 years old. She went through really, really hard life in order to find a way to take care of him. And like Sitota, she reached a point where after couch surfing and not having a home of her own, but living in people's houses or bedrooms, she wanted to kill herself. And it was because of her boy that she decided not to. So she's also really hardworking and resourceful. So she would wake up early and make mandazi. Say mandazi. You guys don't mess up. You guys are good. So the mandazi are these little square Swahili donuts. And she'd make them and serve them to children who are going to school or adults who are on their way. She'd find a high traffic area. But she never had the capacity to make very much. She'd do that in the morning, and in the afternoon she'd go wash clothes for people. And people who live that kind of life, they have very irregular incomes, and on a bad day you'll make no money, or you can even have loss. On a good day, you might make $1. maybe 2. So it's really hard to live with that, live on that kind of income, and it's really, really hard to take care of your child on that. So one day, a visitor came from Convoy of Hope to her house, and she wasn't there. She heard about it when she got back. It wasn't her house, it was the house where she was staying. It was somebody else's house. That was our program officer who talked to teachers at the primary school. At the primary school, we have a children's feeding program, so every day, all of the children there, they get a lunch. There are about almost 1,300 children who get lunch at that school every day. And it's a really big deal for them. It's a big deal for us, too. It's an honor to be working with them. So we went to the teachers and we asked, who in this community, who among your students can we work with in our Women's Empowerment Program? They gave a list of names. We also went to some pastors and community leaders, got some more names, and did home visits. Of the people who are listed, we get to put about half of them into our Women's Empowerment Program, and Matilda was chosen. So she started doing similar business to what she was doing, but on a bigger scale. She wakes up at 4 a.m., makes those mandazi, those Swahili donuts, and by mid-morning, she's finished with them. She wanted to have a shop of her own. She was able to get that shop after the training and startup capital provision that Convoy of Hope provided. So she has clothes. She has a business selling Swahili cloths. You see this red that I'm wearing? There are these, even this black, there's these cloths called vitenge and kangas, and she sells them from her shop. People sew them into shirts and dresses and gowns. So she sells them, and then she also has another business selling foodstuffs. She takes this business really, really seriously, and she sees it as her way out of where she came from. And she can tell it pretty stoically, but when you talk about her son, that's when she gets really emotional. Even me. I'm going to tell this story, though, with a straight face. No tears, promise. Her son, he really, really loves his mother, and he sees how hardworking she is. And so he'd tell her, when you ask him about the future, a normal kid might say, like, I want to be a doctor, I want to be a pilot. He'll say, I want to build my mother a really big, beautiful house. And he sees and understands, and it's part of that's because he receives his mother's love and he knows it. So many of the participants that we have in our programs, in their past, they don't get to experience the love of their mothers or of their parents as in such a way that we would recognize it as love. And so many of them don't know that they're loved by God because of the hardship that they face in their lives. And for me, that's the most heartbreaking thing, for a child to not know that God loves them. Matilda, she has her shop. There was a time last month in July when she had a leg injury on her ankle, and so she couldn't move around. She told me last week that having that shop saved her life, because if she had to walk around selling stuff like she was doing before, she couldn't do that with her legs. So for 2 weeks she was out of commission, but in the shop she was able to sit and customers would come to her and she was able to continue making money and feeding her children. Now imagine this story multiplied by 2,800. And that's something we can celebrate.
Yeah. I think one of the things that I love about these programs is that they're sustainable, that they are giving real life skills, real business skills, and it's not just the single mother that is being helped, but it's the children that are being helped. And Dowdy's got story after story after story, and it's not just the immediate family, but then it extends to the extended family. And they become people who are able to employ other people, and they are people who are able to take in other children. And so what we're really talking about is a real kind of socioeconomic, cultural change. And at times, I think what Convoy of Hope is doing so well is that they're meeting the physical needs and the human needs so well that these people just trust them. If they can trust them with the human needs, if they can trust them with the physical needs, they're going to trust them with the faith needs as well. And so they just have open door after open door after open door because all of these things are based out of faith in Jesus Christ.
That's right. That's our core as individuals and as an organization, and we see that, what you're talking about. Even you reminded me of something with Matilda, that if you talk about her plans for the future, just like her son said, I want to build a nice house for you. He also wants to be a pilot, by the way. So her plan for the future is to be able to help widows and orphans. James 1:27, I think. Go help widows and orphans, and she lives that. So she was empowered last year, but she's already started to do that. She's helping people from her extended family to get education. She teaches other women in her community the business that she learned how to do. Her theory is that even if you teach your neighbor to do the exact same business that you're doing, you don't have to fear competition. When you do that, God is going to give you the clients or the customers. So she'll make competition for herself as a form of worship almost. Yeah.
So last thing, just to kind of wrap up a little bit here, there's another program that you get to be involved with, and it is Empowered Girls. Can you tell me about some of the issues that young women in East Africa and Asia, what they're facing?
Yeah. Life is hard for poor people wherever you are in the world, but there are certain cultural things that make it especially hard for girls. In Tanzania, we have 120 tribes, and it's Convoy of Hope. We work in lots of different countries. I get to work in Kenya and Ethiopia and the Philippines, and we have, among those, there are hundreds of other tribes too, so each are a little bit different. But I want to talk about the Maasai, which is the main tribe in the community where I live. And
I think you're Maasai.
I am.
Yeah.
It's also mine. So in the Maasai hierarchy of things, of life, cows are at the top. And below cows are men, because men manage the cows. And below them are children because children take care of the cows. And below them are women, because women take care of the children. And so girls aren't trained this, but you know it. It's in your culture, and you internalize it, and so girls know that they're at the bottom of the hierarchy in their society. And so they know that there are low expectations put on them academically, in terms of getting jobs. They know that the decisions in their lives belong to their fathers until the point where they get married, then the decisions belong to their husbands. So they don't have a lot of control over their lives, and thus they don't have control over their bodies either. Their bodies also belong to husbands, according to the old-fashioned tradition, which unfortunately some of those things are still strong. So girls face unique problems with self-esteem, understanding their own worth, sexual violence against them. For a lot of girls who are in school, they don't get pads, these sanitary pads, when they're menstruating, so this interferes with their education.
You talked about sexual violence against them. Is that like 1 in 10? I mean, is that normal?
Yeah, it's common. There's one place where we're starting to work in northern Uganda, where a UN agency did a study in a place called Adjumani, and they found that 70% of the women in their survey were victims of sexual violence, 70%. And of those same women, 78% witnessed sexual violence against someone who they were close to. So it's common, it's normal, unfortunately. That doesn't mean, though, that it's any less painful or less devastating. There's one girl who's in our program, let's call her Mary. Mary was raped by the husband of her aunt when she was around 14. After it happened, she felt like garbage. She felt worthless. And she couldn't tell anybody because there's stigma. Even if it's common, there's still that stigma. So she just said, okay, I'm worthless. She started drinking, she started smoking marijuana, and she became sexually promiscuous in her lifestyle. She kept this going for a long time. She joined Empowered Girls Club, which I mentioned earlier in this conversation. She joined Empowered Girls because she likes dancing. And she saw that they're dancing and having fun, and she said, let me go dance, join them on stage. Through the process of dancing and gaining confidence and the sisterhood that exists there and the safe space that she felt, she went and talked to the Empowered Girls teacher, and she told her story of how she was raped and why she maybe didn't even know why she was doing those things she was doing, but she came to recognize it through seminars in Empowered Girls. Mm-hmm. And she said, I have had enough with this. So the Empowered Girls teacher was able to tell her how special she is, that she's a princess, and that the God who created her with purpose and created her in his image, and that she's not garbage, she's a treasure. You can tell somebody that once, but you have to remind them over and over and over for it to really sink in. And Empowered Girls Weeks, they meet weekly. Every week they have opportunities to lift each other up. And on their own as girls, once you build that kind of culture among girls, that culture of sisterhood and lifting each other up, then it's not just once a week, but it's every interaction. They're building each other up. So this was a few years ago. Now Mary, she finished school. She succeeded in her exams. She went on. She's in college. She's thriving, and she's teaching other people, other girls, about the same things that she learned about through Empowered. And so that's what we want to see. We want to see these things go out exponentially. We don't train one. We train one who trains the nation.
Well, Dowdy, thank you so much for coming halfway across the globe to come share with us. Can you give him a round of applause? In preparation for this weekend, I've been reading the book of Philippians. And in Philippians, the church sends a gentleman named Epaphroditus to Paul, and Paul says, Epaphroditus supplied what you could not. Basically, you couldn't physically come and help me, but your friend Epaphroditus can. And it's just been on my heart all week that this is Epaphroditus for us, that this is our extension, that this is our partner, this is our brother and his wife, our sister in Tanzania and East Africa and Asia, carrying on the work of Christ there. And so it gives me meaning. It gives great joy to be able to give to organizations like Convoy of Hope and to give to programs like the Women Empowerment and the Empowered Girls programs that Dowdy gets to run there. It makes my days and what I work for a little more meaningful because I know it's doing something out in the world that's well beyond me, and I know it's going to a wonderful brother and wonderful sisters who are carrying on the work of Christ. So I'm just so thankful to have you come and share with us. Thanks again, Dowdy.
Thank you too.